Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the TinkerTribe podcast. I'm your host, Greg Dowd, and tonight I am joined by Tim Cook, Toolman Tim's Workshop on YouTube, and we are going to get to know Tim a little better. Recently met Tim in person at the Self Reliance Festival in Camden, Tennessee. And Tim's into a lot of different stuff. He's got some great gear reviews on his channel, equipment and tool reviews. Thank you for joining me tonight, Tim. We're going to get into your story, but thank you for joining me for the first time tonight.
Yeah, man, anytime. I love coming on podcasts. So when you reached out, I was like, yes, I had to make it work tonight. I'm on the road. Once this happens a lot, I travel a lot. So I'm not even in a hotel. I'm actually in my truck with my AirPods. So we made it work tonight, brother. I appreciate the invite.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on to join me. So yeah, the the first thing I like to ask is for all the people that come on the show the first time is tell me a little bit about your story. How did you? I know that you were working in a hardware store for a while, and then you kind of had this. I guess you were talking to your wife, and you were just like, "I want to do something more." And maybe we can kind of go from that point.
Sure, man. Yeah, I originally from Nova Scotia. For those who don't know, that's kind of the main area, like as in the main state in Canada. So it's on the East Coast. It's very rural, and there wasn't a ton of money around for starting businesses. But I always worked steady, and I was kind of a night manager at a hardware store, and I was just absolutely burnt out. I love tools. I love handling with people, dealing with customers, the whole work, customer service. And I was so bad. It was so bad that I thought I'm either going to drop dead here at the job or I need to leave. I looked at my wife and, actually, I should say she looked at me because she said, honey, you need to quit or you're going to be dead. This was what, 13, 14 years ago. And so I did. And, you'd love to say you lived happily ever after, but it was a journey all the way through. I tried my hand at lobster fishing for a little while. Then I worked nights at a lobster pound, which is where they store lobsters before they go off to market. I did some software sales over the phone from home, which I enjoyed, but again, it wasn't paying the bills. So eventually we realized we dug ourselves too big of a hole to get out of. But I had in-laws who were living in Alberta, which is, I call it the Texas of Canada. It's got a lot of oil and it's kind of rednecky in a good sense. And anyway, so they said, if you want to come out, you can sleep on a fold-up bed in the living room. And what it turned out to be was the living room of their mobile home. They just had a baby, and my mother-in-law was staying there as well, and they were still kind enough to let me do that.
Well,
And
they had a baby at the time.
yeah, the baby was Noah. He's what is he now? 10. He was 2 months old, 3 months old at the time.
Oh,
And they
wow.
said, yep. They even lent me half the money for the plane ticket because we were that broke.
Wow.
So I hopped on the plane. I did not have, and I'm not exaggerating. I didn't have enough money to rent a vehicle while I got there. They picked me up. They let me stay with them. I barely had enough to buy pizza at the airport when I had my connecting flight. Like it was.
Dang.
Anyway, so and I didn't even have a job when I got out there, but I knew I would be able to because it was the oil patch and it was what 2013, 14, and it was booming. So within 2 days, I had two jobs. I picked the one I liked the best and just started working. Saved some money. Within 5 months, I'd moved the family out, left them home in a 130-year-old house. Becky with five kids, including twins who were like, what were they, 18 months, 2 years at the time.
Oh, wow.
And they moved out with us and Becky got a job. We were doing great. We thought we were doing really good. Started paying our bills off. We were going to take a vacation, and they asked Becky to come in on her first day of vacation and said, "Hey, sorry, but we're going to let you go." And that was the day that the price of oil had collapsed, and they started doing cutbacks everywhere. So within oh man, I don't know, within 6 months, I was out of a job as well. And I thought, hey, what am I going to do? I'm sure as hell not going to go back and work at a hardware store because much as I loved it, it stressed me out beyond belief. So I started a handyman business, and I'd love to say I was successful, but I wasn't because I didn't charge enough. I didn't know what I was doing. So I eventually went back and worked at a hardware store again
Yeah.
because that's what I knew, right? But it's cool. The thing I did different this time was I kept my business going and I made connections. And the coolest thing was I met all these property owners who were just great and they were looking for somebody to do all this odd jobs that nobody wanted to do, you know?
Hmm.
And so I just kept doing them and I would work. Eventually, I realized where are you again, Greg?
I'm down in the South. I'm in Alabama.
Okay, so do you know what that white stuff is that falls from the sky sometimes?
Barely.
Okay, well, we get a lot of that up here, like a lot. And it gets minus 40. And for many years, I called that white gold
Hmm.
because I made a killing doing snow. I filled the niche. I didn't do like driveway plowing or like bobcat work. I did like backpack on my back and I would blow sidewalks, decks, that kind of stuff.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I was doing that while I was at the hardware store. And I would take contracts on, do it morning, night, whenever I could do it. And a year to the day that I started back at the hardware store, I quit and started and went full time, even though I didn't have enough business to go full time, but I was ready to do it. I launched, it was called All Seasons Maintenance, which was, I called it doing all the stuff that nobody else wanted to do, dog poop, gutter cleaning, window, whatever it was, And so it started to grow little by little by little. And it made enough income in the first year that we didn't sink. We did okay. My wife was working.
Uh-huh.
And then it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where I had to hire somebody, which was cool. And so during there was that crazy thing that happened in March 2020, where the whole world shut down, and yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you remember that, don't you? So we thought that a really good idea during that time was to open a new daycare. We thought, hey, we've got a little extra money, we're finally doing well, and we want to invest in a good business.
Oh,
And I
wow.
always told my wife, I know, I said, if we can make it during COVID, we can make it anytime.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
so we took every extra penny from All Seasons Maintenance and we opened up a daycare called Busy Bees Daycare, which was awesome. And I'd love to say that went smoothly, but about 7 months in, we had a staff meeting where we said, if things don't turn around, we have to shut down. We're just telling you. We're committed to make it work, but still, Anyway, we kept persevering. We made some cuts, and just at that time, we started getting some more kids in the daycare, and that picked up. And now, of course, that's anyway. I'll get to that. Sorry, you cut me off whenever you want. But so we went from there, and my handyman kept building, and eventually, I mean, just to put it into perspective, getting on that plane with no money in my pocket at all, I just sold All Seasons Maintenance after 7 years of doing it myself. It was really kind of a cool feeling because the
Wow.
daycare's grown enough. In the meantime, I launched a YouTube channel, which has been going 4 years, and that's now making me a full-time income as well. And I got into property management, and I built the property management business kind of at the same time. And now I'm sitting in my truck that says Toolman Tim's Property Management on the outside. So that's my business now, the YouTube channel. And to boot, since one daycare wasn't enough, we just signed the lease today for a brand new location an hour away. And we just signed a contract to purchase a third location. So, I'm a firm believer that you make your own luck and you make your own luck through hard work. And that's what we've done. Here we are. And whew, man, it's been a journey.
Wow, wow. That's a really cool story, man. Like I was recently listening to you give that talk at the Midwest Preparedness Festival, and you were talking about how you can kill that or defeat that mindset that a lot of folks have is that we make a lot of excuses for ourselves in saying that I what what's your say must be nice
Must be nice.
must be nice.
I just got a message from John Willis earlier today that said those three words exactly, and that made my day. I was like, "Thank you, brother." That made my week actually. It's become my mantra, because I the whole presentation, the thrust of it is to murder the poverty mindset. And if your listeners didn't quite catch it when I mentioned it, but we were poor. Like, I mean, And it was 100% self-inflicted. Like, did we go through hard times? Yeah, we did, but we made a lot of bad decisions. And I chalk that up to wrong thinking. It's not that easy, but that's where it started. The poverty mindset. We call it the must be nice mindset, my wife and I, because, and where that comes from is, you'll see a guy pull into a gas station in a BMW, and your brain has two responses to that. Either, oh, must be nice, or good for him. And if you say good for him, I found myself a successful person. If you say must be nice, you've already decided you're not going to be successful. And that's where it came from for us. Was it we realized, I mean, dude, like, it was so bad for years. I didn't want to go. If we had to stay at a hotel when we were traveling with the kids, I didn't want to go in because I was worried the credit card was going to be declined, like, just stupid. That's just, where we lived, and we were in rough shape. But again, it was because we made so many bad choices. And so now, my community, that we call them delinquents. So if you're a part of the workshop community, you're a delinquent because you don't really care what the world's doing. You're doing your own thing and living your own life outside the system. And so anytime somebody does something good, or somebody comes on, today, Carrie Brown just came on and he's like, hey, I just rebuilt this tiny generator. And so it'd be really common for somebody else to come on and say, must be nice. Or Yozit got himself an extra side hustle this week. And everybody will come on, must be nice. And we now have an expletive filled version that we respond with, and it's great. So
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. It's like a nice way to like kind of rib your buddies or whatever.
yeah, and
Uh,
it's a way to show that you're proud of them too, even though it comes across as sarcasm.
yeah. I follow Owen Benjamin, the comedian, and he does jokes about that. Where he talks about how you have those people that are like always like must be nice.
hmm I would love to interview that dude. So I've heard his stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, 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 absolutely.
Oh yeah, he's great. So one of the questions that somebody wanted me to field to you was if when you were starting this handyman business, did you have to rent any kind of equipment to use while you were out there? Like, was there certain jobs that you had to maybe rent a piece of equipment for, or did you just kind of like pick up tools and equipment as you went and kind of owned those pieces of equipment?
Yes. So okay, one of my I would say one of my mantras for anybody that asks me, I want to start a business, I don't know where to start. I say the first thing you need to do, if you can do it, is start a service-based business, because there's very little upfront investment. It's not like you're starting a widget company where you need, $1 million investment upfront venture capital. With a service business, like if I want to go pick up dog poop, I could literally do it with rubber gloves and a garbage can if I needed to. You know, now I went and bought a scooper for $20, but I tell people, go in your garage and do that 360 look. See what you have that can make you money. Do you have a ladder that you can climb up and do gutter cleaning, right? And then if you want something for equipment, take a job and bid the price in for a piece of equipment, or save up from another job and buy it, which is good. But to more answer the question about renting stuff, yes, I did that a lot. So I realized after a couple of years, I was buying stuff that I wasn't using very often. So, I would see, for instance, a lawn aerator. That's a big thing here. People love their lawns aerated.
Mm.
And for people who don't know, it's this machine that punches holes in the grass and then picks up these little things that look like dog turds and leaves them everywhere. It's supposed to make it healthy. I don't know. So anyway, I bought a used one time, and I realized, dude, I've got this 300-pound piece of equipment that I use twice a year, 2 days a year. The rest of the year, I'm tripping over it. I have to winterize it. It's a piece of gas equipment that I have to frig with all the time. So I sold it because I realized I could go and rent a lawn aerator for 24 hours for $85, and I would make $1,000 in that day.
Oh
I would
wow.
book 10 to 12 lawn aerations, charge $100 a pop. After you subtract gas and the rental fee, I was good. So yes, yeah, I would rent. How about sometimes utility trailers? So I used to, I don't want to think, but I used to move people a lot. So if people are like, hey, we're moving from one house to another, they would hire me. and I
Oh,
only
okay.
had a little tiny trailer. So I'd rent U-Haul trailers sometimes. I'm a big believer in being very friendly with your local rental place because you can make a lot of money from them. And if a couple of rules my dad always taught me. He said, whenever you rent equipment, make sure you wash it and fill it full of fuel before you take it back because they remember that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That was kind of just wondering about that because, yeah, just like you're saying, you got all the maintenance on this equipment and all that upkeep, and then you got to make sure that you're keeping the fuel out of it and all that. So a lot of times it makes more sense to, unless you have like that's all that you do and you need that one piece of equipment to get all that done all the time, I guess. But if you're picking up these different types of jobs and you can just go out and rent something to get it done, that makes a lot of sense.
Like my zero turn lawnmower. I needed to own a zero turn lawnmower because I had to mow every week. So it's not like I was going to go out and rent one every time I needed it. But a skid steer or a bobcat, as some people call them, I could rent one of those a couple of times a year to do like a lawn rehab for somebody, or say we had a really big dumping or a bunch of dumpings of snow back to back, and I needed to move a lot of snow. I mean, how many times can I rent a skid steer for $250 a day before I pay for one? They're 50 grand or more. So, I could rent it for half a year before I even think about paying it. And I'm not going to do now, albeit if you want to do that, go rent one and leverage that into something. Yeah, you could make a lot of money. But I always look at, the cost and also think about the return on or the work involved in purchasing a piece of equipment. It's like an RV. You buy an RV and you got a winter. Well, you don't in Alabama or anywhere like that, but up here you buy an RV. So, you winterize it, you de-winterize it, you move it, so think about all the other work that's involved in purchasing something too.
Right. Right. So, uh, I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about um, what is the importance of having people around you that will motivate you and like want to see that you succeed, maybe challenge you and things like that. Like, how important is that to kind of surround yourself with the right people?
Oh, dude, like I say it a lot, but I wouldn't be number one. I would not be here if it weren't for my wife. And that, a lot of people they always, I want to thank God and I want to thank my wife. No, I'm telling you, man, like if it wasn't for Becky, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So having a supportive partner. I mean,
Oops, we lost Tim there. We lost him. He's on his cell phone, so he might have to join us back here again.
yep, there we are. I just booted me from the meeting. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah. So
It's all right.
supportive partner. Yeah, you can hear me okay.
Yep, I can hear you.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, surrounding yourself with the right type of people, man, is so important. For me, I've heard it, you've heard it said before, and I believe this, that if you're the smartest person in a room or the most ambitious person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Because if you're the type of guy that goes to the bar, hangs out at the bar, goes to the ammo shop, the gun shop, and all you do is sit there and complain about politics, that's all you're ever going to do. But if you hang out with people who are interested in making their life better, are interested in doing things all the time, are interested in making money, interested in building business, they're going to drag you along. It's like positive peer pressure.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something for me right now, actually. So I'm going to call it full time on my YouTube channel over within the last year. I outsourced my grass last year. So I hadn't done that in a year and a half. I did snow last year, but I finally sold everything this year. And I want to tell you something. Doing content creation is a very sedentary lifestyle. And all of a sudden, I went from, and I've never been a small guy. Everybody knows that I've never been a small guy.
Me either, man.
But
I've always been a
yeah,
bigger guy.
so on this last trip I just took, I realized that I had, let's just say, let myself go. I was getting rather portly. more than I had been in many years, and I just wasn't feeling good, like just gross, just tired. And I'm like, I can't do this. This is stupid. So you know what? I talked on my podcast. I said, dude, I'm tired of being fat. I am. I'm just tired and done with it. And Yozik, anyway, what an awesome guy. So this is the power of community. He's like, I'm starting a new group, a new offshoot in your Telegram group. Whoever wants to join can, but it's going to be a place where we encourage each other and we check in and be accountable with each other to make sure, yep, you got on the treadmill today. Yep, you stuck to your calorie deficit and your keto today. That's what we do. We're there. That's the power of community, and it's working. So I'm telling you, whether you want to lose weight, whether you want to build a business, whatever, do it.
Uh, Tim, I know too well what you're talking about because while I was at Self Reliance Festival, I asked John a question about how do you defeat that kind of negative, some of that negative thoughts in your head, and he came back at me and was told me, well, why don't you focus on your body first
Yep,
and get your physical house in order. And so I'm doing the same thing, man. Starting and filming everything and putting it on social media just to keep myself accountable and staying disciplined and doing a workout every day to get it done. And I'm telling you, man, 3 weeks in,
yep,
and I've noticed huge changes in my body and in my overall mood and everything. So, yeah, I was the same way, man. I was tired all the time, like just didn't feel like I had any energy. And it's like every day I do one of these workouts, I just feel so much more energy, and
hmm
those negative thoughts and things are kind of kind of going away.
like it I didn't expect to go this route, but this is great. I love it. But for me, it was, I can do anything. Like, I'm just that guy. Like if I decide I'm going to do something, I just do it. But I got to, I'm on stage at Self Reliance Festival talking about the poverty mindset and overcoming negative thinking. And on the way home, I'm like, dude, I've got everything else lined up and doing exactly what I want to do. I said, but I'm not taking care of myself. This has got to stop. I'm like, so I need to put my money where my mouth is. And so the only people that know my weight loss, where it's at and where it will be, is in the Telegram group. But I've stuck to my calorie deficit, and I've every day since I've gotten home have done a half an hour on the treadmill. And I want to tell you, beyond anything else, I feel like $1 million already.
Yeah, I would always dread because like I used to play football in high school, and just going and doing the workouts and everything like that. I just remember those days and how I was just so worn out and tired, and like uh, how it kind of wore me down. But like I forgot about the part where you gain all that muscle and then you're feeling so much better as well. So I forgot about that part, but I've always struggled with it over the years of my life. I would go up and then I'd lose a bunch and then come back down, and but I kind of let myself go pretty bad, and now focusing on that, and I'm telling you what, it is a mind, it's shifting my mind a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great. And that to bring it back around, that's the power of community right there, because yeah, I mean, just having those people who will reach out and say, "Hey, did you get on the treadmill today? Did you, and also knowing that there's people there waiting to hear. Oh yeah, I mean, you don't want to let them down either, right? And you definitely don't want to be, because they won't let you down. They won't let you live it down if you don't.
Right. Yeah, that's what I said. I felt that was probably the kick in the butt I needed to get going. Um, so one of the things that you said in your speech to the Midwest Preparedness Fest, you said that you give yourself permission to take no action. Um, when kind of when you're in this poverty mindset, like when you're like, maybe you gave the example of like you like to watch baseball games,
Yep,
and you gave that up so that you could focus on doing and learning a new skill so that you could you know get further ahead than where you were. So Yeah, maybe if you could talk a little
Yeah,
bit
man.
about that, like how we give ourselves permission to just not take any action.
Yeah, so I always laugh, and I almost roll my eyes a little bit whenever I use that damn example of I give up my Blue Jays games to build my YouTube channel, because everybody's like, "Oh, what are you telling me, to give up baseball?" No. What I'm telling you is to give up your baseball. Whatever is the thing that's getting in your way of doing great things, then give it up. I don't care. You can watch 162 games a year. And if you feel guilty, that's on you, brother. But for me, what I needed to do, if I wanted to find enough time without taking away from my wife and my other existing business, I had to give up those 3 hours a day, 162 games a year, because I loved my ball. I mean, yeah, it was religion for me. I mean, I know you can't see it, but there's a Blue Jays tattoo on my arm
Oh
now,
wow.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, but whatever. But I'm not telling you give up hockey, football. You just figure out. What I'm telling you is whatever great thing you want to do is find 10 hours a week for it, or 20 hours a week. You'll find it. Whatever's important to you, you'll do. But the inverse of that is when you're working in the poverty mindset is, or when you're living in the poverty mindset, usually, you can work in poverty, but is most everything that comes out of there is a person's excuse for inaction. I look at other people and I'm like, this will be the poverty mindset. Well, you don't understand. It's just the way it is here. Okay, cool. I guess I don't. So, in other words, you're not even going to try. Or, if I was born rich, then I'd have a chance. Okay, well, you're not going to try, or I can't, I won't. Well, again, all right, that's fair, or, um, if I was just born somewhere different, if I was born with money, if, whatever it is, if I had so and so's talent, or if I made so and so's connection, all it is excuses to not do anything. Because, again, sitting at home, eating Cheetos or whatever it was I like to eat all the time, you may not feel good, but it's comfortable because it's what you know. Getting your ass up and hopping on the treadmill is uncomfortable. Doing things, stepping into your comfort zone, is uncomfortable, And that's what it comes down to is humans in general like to stay comfortable. And the poverty mindset gives you permission to not do anything. Or maybe not do, but not try for big things. Because you know what? If I believe that I am beholden to where I came from, or my success is based on my lineage, or my family, or my town, or whatever, then why would I ever even try? Because if the world's against me, and if because of where I came from, I can't do anything, why would I even bother? And that's what it is. A person is looking, and we're all looking for self validation. And that's why we surround ourselves with people who don't want to do or just want to sit around and moan about whatever it happens to be. We're all looking for that validation to say, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to sit at home and not do it.
Yeah. I see it in in my own family, and it's like, oh, we just came from peasants, like we'll just be peasants or whatever. It's like, um, and there is all this time, like when you sit and you look at what you're doing on a daily basis, like those videos that I'm watching maybe to entertain myself or whatever, like I could be using that time to learn a new skill and develop that skill so that I can go out and be able to do some kind of side hustle or whatever. Like one of the things that and having the community thing is very important too, is because like we get together as a local freedom cell group, and
Nice.
there are folks in my group that want to go out of town sometimes, and they've got their homestead, and so like I offered to be a farm sitter for those folks. So and then from there, like other people heard that I was doing that, and then I started farm sitting and milking somebody else's goats and stuff. So you know, um, I do think that is one thing that like maybe I've heard it said that perfect is the enemy of the good,
Oh, yes.
and maybe a lot of times people want everything to be in just the right order, just like the best way that they could think, so that if they put something out there or what they're doing is going to be like the best thing, and they're making all these plans, but they never execute. Whereas, if you just get started, I guess you can start learning along the way.
Oh man, 100%. I've used this example a ton, but siding my house, for instance, I knew, I had never done it before. Actually, you know what? Let's back up. That's an old one. Today, I had to install a heavy duty door closer, like an industrial grade, industrial strength, whatever you want to call it, on a fire door for the new daycare that we just leased. I've never done that before. There's lots of things I've done before, but I've never done it. Here's the thing. If I'd have sat down and wanted to make sure I knew absolutely everything before I started, I probably never would have done it because anyway, I drilled the holes in the wrong spot the first time. And I spent 40 minutes lining things up, making sure I had everything right. And I still drilled the holes in the wrong spot. But you know what? I started, I learned, I changed, I pivoted, I drilled the holes in the right spot, I put it in, I adjusted, I learned as I went. And if I'd have waited till I was 100% comfortable, I never would have done it. Always. If movement is better than inaction every day of the week. And if you start something, there's so many projects I start all the time that I don't know how, I don't even know my fourth step. I just know my first and second step, and I figure out the rest as I go. And it may not be ideal, but I promise you, you will get way more done in your life if you just start than if you wait for the perfect tool or wait for the perfect moment or, whatever it happens to be. Insert excuse here. And I tell this story not to, boast myself up, because when you're talking about, watching videos or doing it, dude, I waste so much time in the run of a week,
Yeah.
but I still get up and do, and if you just start and take a step, the next step gets a little easier. And sometimes I find that when you're doing something like that, like say residing a house, you might not even understand what the next step's going to be until you've completed the first one. And that's the way it is. You're kind of walking through the woods and you're on a trail. You might not be able to see the curve coming up in the path until you go past this next tree, but you wouldn't have got past that tree if you hadn't have taken that last step. And that's how it's always been for us: is get started, we'll figure it out on the way.
Nice. Uh, we got Backwoods Butcher in the chat. It says step one of being motivated become friends with Tim Cook. The man's a Red Bull something person.
Did you have to have? Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, yeah, but you know what? That's what I love. So we talk about surrounding ourselves with good community. Um, there, oh man, I'm so proud. I tell him all the time, Backwoods Butcher, but that is a dude. There's a dude that puts his money where his mouth is. That guy puts out incredible content. I think he's been doing it 6 months now, maybe even less than 6 months, and he is, just killing it. And I'm so proud of him. And he's doing it because he surrounded himself with good people. He reached in and started, joining the communities that he needed to be in, and that's great. And you know what? He's going to have little baby Backwoods Butcher following him eventually too. I say for me, most people should know who Jack Spirko is, I would think, from the Survival Podcast. And I always say, like, where his family tree comes from. So he started, I use him as the example because he was the first podcaster I listened to. So him and Nicole Sauce from Living Free in Tennessee, so she got her start by listening to him. And then I got my start by listening to him and listening to her. And then, Brian Alexovich kind of came after listening to me a little bit. And then Kyle, Backwoods Butcher, came from listening to Brian. So you get this whole, like, there's going to be people for years who will be creating content because of the day that I started, or the day that Jack Spirko started in the Volvo the Jetta back in 2007, that he'll never know about and I'll never know about. But that's the beauty of starting, and then surround yourself with people who want to do.
Absolutely, man. Like, for the longest time, I thought about starting a podcast, and I was talking about it, and then one day I was like, I still had. So this is the original mic I had for when I first started the podcast. I think it was like back in 2018, and yeah, man, it was just like getting started with it and just starting to talk to people, and everybody, folks I thought were very interesting in doing things that were building the world and planting the seeds of the trees they may never rust under, but
Hmm.
but taking actions in their life to, become better and keep, building the future that they want to see by, I think I, I'm coming to realize that a lot of the way that we change the external world is by changing ourselves first.
And I talk about change being uncomfortable, but the down or the I don't know if you want to call it the downside to it or whatever, but you're going to suck at first, no matter what you do. And that gets harder the older you get. When you're younger, when you're 12, 15, 16 years old and you try a new skill, yeah, you'll suck at it for a day or two and then you quickly master it. But as your neural synapses get developed over years, it takes longer to rewire that stuff. So you have to not just embrace the fact that you're going to do the reps over the next bit of time, but you also have to embrace the fact you're really going to suck at something for a while before you get good at it. And if you're okay with not being good, you're going to be great eventually. And for me, it's like that with every skill I've ever learned. And a lot of them I just learn until proficiency. I don't master them. I just learn something to move on. But for me, I guess, as I used to be a perfectionist. It was learning that it's okay to suck at something and be open about it and share it with other people, because you might just inspire them to do it too.
Mm. Yeah, they always. I can't. I think there is this phrase like everybody talks about, jack of all trades but master of none. But I think like the original phrase was something like, um, uh, jack of all trades but better than a master of one, or something like that. I I can't remember. The original phrase I think got kind of messed or like kind of distorted or whatever over time. But I do think it is good to have like skills in a lot of different areas, because when it comes to guys like these, like the folks that are in the permaculture world, where they're actually like studying a lot of different things, like physics and hydrology and observing nature and biology, and there's all these kind of things coming together, and it you if you were just a specialist in one of those certain areas, like you couldn't see the connections. I would say
Hmm.
on how everything can kind of work as a system. So I do think it is a good thing to have a lot of skill areas in a lot of different things. So
For sure, and that helps in. I mean, that helps in business too. I've said for a lot of years. I said I would almost encourage just about any teenager who's getting a first job to either try something in retail or try something in the food service industry, because you'll get skills there. I remember, I joke, but I did 4 years in university, and as soon as I graduated, I put it to use by working nights at a Dairy Queen. But you know what? I loved that job. I learned about inventory at that job. I learned how to tear ice cream machines apart. I learned how to make ice cream cakes from scratch. These were all weird skills that I just learned. I learned how to diffuse ugly customers you get them all the time, but there were so many
yeah,
skills that I would learn no matter where you're at. And then you take them and you apply them to the next thing. So working at Dairy Queen, the guy who hired me at the hardware store poached me from there because I was doing my best damn job at the drive-through window. He noticed it. I treated him like gold every time he came through. He called me out of the blue. I don't even know how he got my phone number. I don't think I ever asked him, but he got my home phone number somehow. Called me at home one night and said, "Hey, do you want to come work for me?" And I turned him down once, but I didn't turn him down twice. So, learning a little bit about everything, it just makes you better. I spent 7 years almost working in the hardware store, and I became really good at sales. I became really good at customer service. I learned how to assemble barbecues and TVs and all that stuff. I sold tools, hardware. I turned all of that into the handyman business. And yeah, being into a bunch of different things, it kind of gives you that outside perspective to be able to handle a whole bunch of things at one time.
yeah, and just like what you're talking about, like coming out of college and like taking the job at Dairy Queen. It's like, yeah, maybe that's not your ideal thing that you want to do. But whatever you're doing, like you said, somebody came and saw because you were doing a really good job at Dairy Queen that they, kind of wanted you to come work for them. I think that's like wherever you find yourself, just like because I had to do this myself. Like I kind of like at one point kind of had like a bad attitude about
Sure.
kind of coming into work and doing the work I was doing, and then I just flipped the switch in my mind and it was like, well, I'm coming here. I'm gonna give it everything I got when I come in here every day, and I'm just gonna just kill it every day, and that just helped me so much being like proud at the end of the day. I could look and see all that work that I got done during that day and just makes me feel good about what I accomplished and everything. And the people noticed it where I worked. They were like, okay, this guy's really doing a good job and he's getting things done. So that pass that message along to the owner of the company and stuff. Um, so yeah, I mean, wherever you're at, I mean, you're gaining great skills and the attitude that you're going to bring to it. You never know what that could lead to in the future as well. It might help you get to that next point that you want to be at.
I on my way home, I consume audiobooks all the time. I'm not much for sitting down reading paper books anymore. I don't know what's happened to me, but I listened to Arnold Schwarzenegger's latest book called Be Useful. One of the best books, and he was the narrator. So I thought, oh, this could be bad, and it was awesome. But two of his things that he talked about, and I was, oh yeah, I've embraced a couple of them when I'm on the treadmill and things like that. But he said, number one, and people would ask him all the time, how do you just keep going to the gym? And how do you keep lifting? And he said, the first thing I had to do in my life was embrace the reps. If I ever want to do great things, I have to know that I have to put the time in every single day. You're not going to be great at something overnight. You're not even going to be great at something in a year. I've been podcasting for 4 years and I feel like I just finally turned a corner. And that happens all the time. You have to embrace the reps of whatever you want. You have to go to work and put every bit you have in. And the other thing he said was, people always ask, why were you smiling when you were lifting weights? He said, it must have hurt. He goes, yeah, it hurt. But he said, every time it hurt, I knew I was growing or I was doing something. And so I smiled because I knew I was going to be the best at it. And I was like, I love it. So in other words, embrace the sucker, embrace the reps. Just you got to put the time in. Don't just put the time in for the sake of putting it in, but always be trying to do a little bit better, but do it with a smile on your face. And those two things I pulled out of that. If that's all I got out of that book, man, I'd tell everybody to read it. That's one of the most motivating. It was the best book to read on the drive home or listen to on the drive home from Self Reliance Festival.
Was it in the governator's voice?
100%. Yeah, he basically, it was awesome. I mean, the whole thing is he breaks his life down into three parts. Weightlifting, Hollywood, and politics. And he just talks about how he in his life when he wanted something he just did it. And people say, oh, it must be nice. Yeah, it's easy to be a governor when you were Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, guess what? Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Hollywood actor, was Arnold Schwarzenegger, the worldwide bodybuilder, who came from a small town in Austria with a father that was abusive, and they had no money. So whatever, he puts his mind to something and he does it, and anybody else can do it too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um. Uh. So, one of the things that you were saying earlier was that you started doing property management as a kind of full time doing that. I remember listening to you and Nicole talking a little bit about being a landlord, and I think one of the things that you mentioned was that when you are being a landlord, like you kind of gotta be you can't be a nice guy. I think is
100%.
you have to be very assertive about what you know, I guess your agreements are and everything and hold people to all those things. So maybe you can talk about, I guess
Yeah, man. Yeah.
if you
We
can if you're not if you're too nice, people are gonna kind of walk over you and kind of ruin that kind of thing for you.
in any relationship, boundaries are important. So if you don't have any boundaries, things can go haywire or sideways really quick. And I've realized after making some really stupid decisions and things in property management, I realized that if I'm a if I'm a dick up front, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but if I'm this is how it is, These are the rules. I don't bend on these things. When people realize that, we have a better relationship really quickly, because people know where the line is. They know not to cross the line, and they know if they do cross the line, that there'll be consequences for that. It doesn't mean that I don't show leeway on occasion, but what it does mean is you don't, for instance, like Nicole said, you don't let people, and I don't know how to put it, but I'm just going to be, you don't let people get behind in their rent, because getting behind in their rent is never good for anybody. Because if you're a month behind now, you're always going to be a month behind, and then you're going to be 2 months behind. So you just tell people when you start, like, here's the deal. A day, okay, no problem. But we're not going to be late with the rent. As simple as that. And if it becomes a problem, then an eviction notice gets written up right away, and you get things. And I'm telling you this as somebody who rented for a lot of years. You work it out. You have when you have solid boundaries, everything works better. Your relationships are better. And when when we just had a new person move in to a rental, we do e-transfer. So the only way we do money is to be sent electronically from. We do it via e-transfer within bank accounts up here, but it's very similar to like a PayPal or Venmo, that kind of thing. So that's the only way we take payment. And I tell everybody that because that's our system. We have 26 rentals we look after. We only own 3, but I have a bunch I look after for other people. And if I had to go around and collect cash from people every month, that system would fall apart really quick. It wouldn't be good. It could be done, but that's not how I built it. So anyway, the lady one month, she said, I got cash for you. Okay, I let it slide. And then the next month, she had cash again. And I messaged her and I said, you do know when you signed your lease that it said e-transfer only. And she said, yeah, I know. And so the third month, she said, I have cash for you. I said, this is the last month I'm coming. She goes, well, let me ask you, why is cash not allowed? I said, it's not allowed because that's our system. Simple as that. We have 26 we have to look after. We have a system that everything has to go electronically, because if I come and pick up cash, anyway, there's a whole lot. But I said, simple as this. You need to know this is how it works going forward. And guess what? Ever since, it's been fine. But when you have when you make leeway, you just have to. And it doesn't mean don't have a heart and don't be a person. But the problem is, in business, sometimes you have to remove yourself from that a bit. And so you have to find your own personal balance of, when can I give somebody a break? But you also have to know that quite often when you give a break, another break comes, and then it just gets worse and worse from there.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that does seem like it would be tough. Especially if you're kind of a person that has kind of a big heart for people, that it might be kind of tough that you have to set that. But just like you're saying, I think that having a big heart for somebody can kind of lead to you getting taken advantage of as well. So, like you're saying, being assertive is is different than just being like this person that is people are thinking you're sometimes being assertive comes off as being a dick like you said it, but you're just setting proper boundaries is what you're saying.
Oh, I mean, I've told Nicole this many times. When I first met her, I thought, man, I don't know if I really like her. She was very assertive. She would set her boundaries and she would tell you how things were and what her expectations were. And I realized that those people who set boundaries and are upfront with things become your best friends, because you have the best relationships with people like that. And when you're and I've adopted that over the last few years, especially, is to be assertive and be upfront. And everything, it might be a little awkward and uncomfortable for a minute or for the first interaction, but after that you're on the same page and it becomes a transaction, or everything's better for it. I spent many years getting walked all over because I would agree to things that I didn't want to do, or I would say yes to things that I shouldn't say yes to, or I would give people an inch and they would take a mile. And eventually I was just a miserable person until I realized, no, you need to list your, and this goes for relationships, this goes for business, it goes for property management, all of it. If you're upfront with your expectations and your boundaries, everything else falls in place afterwards. If you don't, your business, everything won't work.
Yeah, man, I've had to learn that in my life too. Like, cause I've wanted to help help folks, and found myself kind of around people that take a lot, but they don't give a lot back. So it it was something I kind of had to realize. The people that were really draining me, like I felt like after I left them, I felt like I was drained, you know. Whereas
Absolutely.
like the people that kind of lift you up and want you to do better and like bringing you to that kind of another level, you feel energized around them, you know.
And another thing is, if you surround yourself with the right people, as Nicole calls them, energy vampires, or people who drain you, won't stick around because they get really uncomfortable. If a taker is around in a room full of doers, you don't need to say anything. Within a couple of trips, they're not coming back because they realize that the expectation, the peer pressure, is for everyone to help everyone else out and for everyone else to be a doer. And if you're not that way, you just naturally progress out the door.
Yeah, yeah, I think, yeah, I've talked about it. It's almost kind of like it does seem like some people, it's the kind of the crab in the bucket thing where it's like, no, no, stay down here with me, don't do that thing and go this way. And some people can kind of like just try to keep pulling you down there with them, but I think like you just gotta let those people go and just keep doing your thing to improve yourself and keep pushing forward, even though that might be hard.
Oh, again, another book I'm listening to right now is by the creator of The Biggest Loser. And he talks about that when you want to lose weight, that there'll be a lot of people who don't want you to lose weight. And that's simply because when you lose weight, it reminds other people that maybe they need to do something too. And I get it, it's what it is. When you want to excel or succeed at something, that's the few times that people are actually put up against a mirror because they're used to you being, sit around and do nothing or whatever. And all of a sudden you decide, hey, you're going to start doing something. That's when you're inadvertently shining a mirror back at them, and they don't like to see that. And so people will see themselves out eventually if you keep, trying to be better.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of know about the business when you were doing the handyman thing, did you ever have anybody that like didn't pay you for your services, and like how did you deal with that?
So my wife, she's a bulldog. I love her in the best way. I mean, you got to understand this, and we never would do this today, but 15 years ago, she managed a payday loan store. She got the job before we knew what a payday loan store was, but
Yeah.
all we knew is it paid really well. And anyway, uh, so she knows about collecting bills, which is funny. But anyway, we just again we set boundaries with people right away. We if it was a new customer, we didn't do work for free. We would get paid up front because that was just the way it was. If it was monthly customers, it was just a single month we'd let you go, and it's funny you say that because in 7 years, I never got stiffed. But but
Yeah.
the very a guy that I considered a friend, I did his snow for him last year. I even stopped doing it at the end of January. So I took 2 months off the end of his contract because he hadn't paid me in 3 months. He
Mm.
kept telling me he was going to pay me, kept telling me it was only $400, $450. Anyway, a couple of months later, he finally paid me $50. And now we're 7, 8 months later. And anyway,
Yeah.
so I go into the grocery store. I have to see him. I'm not going to bug him. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, but every so often he feels guilty and he'll tell me. But yeah, we would just not give people a long leash, and we just would be persistent. Not mean, but we would just be like, we would check up with people on occasion because occasionally things just people forget to do things or forget to pay things. That's fine, but just don't give them a long leash. And if somebody gets behind, don't forget about them. Keep reminding them to let them know you're there, and they'll pay you.
Okay. Yeah. That's great. So yeah, one of those other things that could you talk about that worst day that you had, that really bad day that you had, where you just kind of wanted to you just throw in the towel on everything?
I had a few, but the one I always jokingly, I've told this one in a bunch, but I call it my terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. and that's based on, it's like a kid's book that has the same title. And it was a bad day. It was a snowstorm, and the winch broke on my four-wheeler, so I didn't have a snowplow there. The four-wheel drive went in my truck that needed to drive me around to the places. My backup truck, I left the lights on, the battery went dead. The snow came in like nobody's business, and I was under equipped. I didn't have a snowblower, and I couldn't leave to go get a good snowblower. Like I mean, it was, and I'm sure there was more than that, but it was horrible. And
You
I
talk
was,
about things
yeah.
going bad in threes. That's like many times
Oh,
more.
dude, it was so bad. Anybody ever want to see it? There's a video I did probably a month afterwards, and I'm sure there's more in there than I can remember now, but it was just awful. And I came in the house and I told Becky, "That's it. I'm done. I'm walking away." And she goes, "Okay, honey." And I was just, because your emotions get the best of you, and I just had made up my mind. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Because I was looking at the snow and it was coming in. The one that always got me was the public school, and there's a ramp there, and it would just drift over, and it would get so hard. And we went over with shovels, and we tried to start into it, me and my buddy, and no, we couldn't even. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it was like trying to spit in the ocean. Like,
Yeah.
it didn't do anything. So anyway, I told her I'm done. She goes, okay, and I sat there for a minute, and I knew I wasn't actually done, but I was just ready to give up. I really was. I probably would have if she'd just said okay. And I'm trying to talk to her, and you know what a husband's like when you're in a bad mood. You just want your wife to listen to you moan and complain, right? And I'm talking to her, she's barely paying attention. And but after about 10 minutes, she goes, okay, get up, time to go. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I got you a snowblower. I said, you can't get me a snowblower. I can't even drive to the nearest town to buy a snowblower. She goes, no, there's an old guy in town. He's got a brand new one. It's been stored away. I posted online that we were in dire need of one. She said, I think he fleeced you a bit on the price, but I don't care. And I went and I paid, I was like $800 or $900 for that brand new snowblower, but I would have paid twice that night if I had the money. And so she's always been kind of my rock. And I return the favor. When she's having a nervous breakdown because something went wrong in the business, I sit there and try to help her. But that, again, that's about having a good partner too. But my buddy Joel Riles, he says all the time, you come to a rock in the road like a boulder, and you think, okay, do I turn around, or do I figure out a way around it, over it, or right through it? And Becky's really good at figuring out ways right through that boulder.
That's great, man. Were you guys always kind of like similarly had a kind of a similar attitude towards, you know, wanting to go in this direction? Did you guys kind of grow together in this direction? Like, were you kind of like-minded individuals in that regard, or was there some growth between you two as well?
Definitely some growth. I mean, you think you know somebody when you're married. When you first get married, we were like 25 at the time or something, and so I think we were married 17 years now, and we were both. You think you love the person and you think you really know them, but as time goes on, you realize, oh yeah, there's a big gap in what you want and what I want. But the cool thing is the longer you're married and the more you work together, the more your values and your, maybe not your values, but well, yeah, your values as well, but your goals and the things you want get closer and closer together. And we realize we really complement each other because, like I said, when we met, I was the type of guy who could do anything, but would be walked all over. And if there's one thing that Becky would never be, it was never to be walked over. And as time's gone on, we've kind of met in the middle. So her drive and her push to get through rocks, it's still there, but those hard edges have come off. And my softness of just being willing to be taken advantage of have hardened up a little bit. And we've complemented each other so that now, here we are 17 years later, we kind of know what each other has to do for things. And she does the things that need to be done. I do the things that need to be done. And we just get shit done all the time.
That's
But
awesome.
it didn't start that way. And I'm not saying it started off bad. We just, when you're young and you're first married, you don't know the way of the world or the way of life, but every year you're together. If you're in a good relationship and you're learning from each other and you're making each other better, then all of a sudden you come to that point.
Cool. Yeah, that's one thing because I'm a single guy right now, and just trying to find somebody that kind of, I don't know, maybe I want to do this kind of off-grid living and kind of that lifestyle of being more self-reliant and things like that. So, um, you know, find it. I want to find a partner that I can that's on board with some of that kind of lifestyle, basically. Um,
I would definitely say go to events if you can, for
that
sure.
yeah,
That would
that's
be
what
yeah.
I'm doing is getting out to a lot as many of the events that I can get to, and trying to meet people there for sure. Um, One of the things I wanted to ask you about your channel, if you talk about your channel a little bit, is you do all these reviews of all these different tools and stuff like that. How do you decide like what tool that you're gonna review and like what's that process like for picking out an item that you want to bring onto your channel and give a review of?
When it first started, it was just whatever I had lying around. I'd be like, what do I like? Because again, I'm a firm believer in just getting started and doing something. And it was kind of cool because I built my YouTube channel as I was building my handyman business. So I was always, okay, what's the next thing I want to buy? And, I remember thinking, I really want to buy, actually, believe it or not, I actually think it was Jack Spirko's idea for me to start uh, reviewing tools. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's the one that gave me that idea. And so I went and bought a DeWalt pole saw, the long extension pole saw with batteries. And I love that tool and I love talking about tools. So I did a review on it and man, in my mind, it blew up. It did pretty good at the time. That was, for my channel, it did pretty good. And so for a couple of years, I would just, whenever I would buy something that I knew I would need for my business, I would just talk about it. I would do a review because I knew I'd already done my due diligence. I knew it was going to be a good product. And people ask me a lot of the time, like, why don't you have negative reviews on your channel? And honestly, it's because for many years, most of what I did was due diligence ahead of time. So I do a ton of research so that most times I wouldn't need to come on and tear something down. I might give you the ins and the outs of something, and I might say, this might not work for you. Like, for instance, a cat, I have this small cat brand booster pack for a vehicle. Well, guess what? It doesn't boost my truck. It won't. But it's
Hmm.
perfect for my wife's SUV. So I'm going to tell you that.
Yeah.
And then the cool thing is once you hit kind of a certain size, companies start reaching out to you. And then you can kind of be picky or particular. So I get a lot of emails now from companies that are like, "Hey, do you want to try this? You want to try that?" And the first thing I look at is it something that my community, my audience would benefit from? Does it fit my channel? Does it fit my brand? If those three things are yes, will I use it? Okay, then I can look at it. If the answer to any of those is no, and then the first thing I always come back to companies with is number one, if you're going to send it, you have to know that I may or may not even review it because if it's if it's an absolute piece of junk, I'm either going to review it and tear it down or I'm not going to review it at all. But you need to know that my review is going to be honest if I end up doing one for it, if that makes sense. And but I'm really really particular. Again, I do a lot of due diligence on products that companies want to send me before we start too. I start looking at them I got sent a Blue Eddy power station the other day. I already knew that brand of that, and so I was really excited to test it out. And I got sent a little generator here a little while ago, and so I try to I try to cut things off, and then I'm 100% upfront with everybody. If you're going to send something, you're going to get an honest review. If you're not cool with that, don't even bother.
Cool. Yeah. That's yeah. I was watching one of your. I really do. I like those little solar inverter things, and I got one of those little Blue Eddy ones back when I think I was listening to like Jack and Sean talk, and they were
Sure.
like, "Dude, there's an Amazon deal for one of these things. Like, you can go buy them for like super cheap." And I brought it out to SRF and just had it as like a little way to charge phones and do stuff like that and in your tent. And yeah, having one is really nice, even just bringing it along for a camping trip. And I saw the one that you did that was like a pretty big one, and you were able to power an RV, like some fans and
My
some.
daughter's here, just so you know. Hey, sweetie, hop in.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're good. No, no, you don't. Yeah, but yeah, that's called a point zero energy Titan. That
Yeah.
thing's got 2,000 watts. We run a coffee maker off it. I love that. Yeah, it was, and that again, that was a partnership with a company who reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you like to try this?" And I said, "Yes." And the channel has morphed from it really was all tools when I started to now it's a lot more backup power and solar and things like that because a channel kind of changes with your passions as well, and you get into one thing or another, and then you also realize that your audience might be into something a little bit different. And so yeah, for me, I still do tools. I love doing tools, but it's not just tools, it's generators and solar stations and like booster packs for vehicles. Yeah, I love it. And if I couldn't change a little bit at times, I'd probably get a little bored with it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's all really good stuff because like you guys, you're teaching me about the generators and like using like an inverter generator rather than like the standard one. I guess it's like one is creating kind of a dirtier power than the inverter generator is kind of what I've heard. Is like
Yes.
the inverter is
Yep.
more stable frequency and everything.
It's like with an inverter, you get that nice clear wave. The like the sine wave I say, like from physics class. It's just a nice round. And your standard generator, depending, there can be quite a bit of variance in it, but it's a lot more jagged. And anything sensitive, like CPAP machines, flat screen TVs, that kind of stuff is going to be way more. And a lot of modern furnaces are all going to be affected by that jagged power.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's really important to know. Um, I love that you do this morale monthly morale patch thing. The patch of the month. Where did you come up with that idea? That I like that. I was in Boy Scouts, and I think part of Boy Scouts was to get you addicted to buying patches.
Oh yes, it. You know what? There was a lot, but I used to be on a group podcast called Fireside Freedom, and it was great. And what I loved about it was a bunch of different creators, and we would throw ideas around. And I knew I wanted to have something for support, so people could find a way. I'm a big fan of value for value, and it all started for me. I needed to figure out something I could throw in the mail from Canada that could go in an envelope that wouldn't cost me an arm and a leg to ship to the States because I knew my audience was in the US. And one night I was talking to Brian Alexovich and I said, dude, you're getting ready to live in an RV and you've got all these hats. What are you going to do with them? And he reaches up and he pulls the patch off his hat. He goes, no, dude. He says, I have one hat. I have lots of patches. And that moment right there is when the Patch of the Month Club was born. And it's pretty good. I'm really pleased with it. We're getting ready to expand to kind of like a bigger Patreon thing in January,
Hmm.
but the patch thing's not changing at all. I love the Patch of the Month.
I love it too, man. I love that idea. um, so let's see. I wanted to talk a little bit about. So you found some property down in Tennessee that you're working on, and so could you talk a little bit about your delinquents gully and how you came across that, and maybe like the plans for that kind of that property?
Sure, yeah, we bought like it ended up being about 16 acres all told. My wife and I we bought it 10 acres and then kind of a five. It was like 10 and a half and like five and a half. So just over 16 when it was all done. And we've been down a couple of times and spent quite a bit of work doing some work on it. And it it's going to be it's a vacation property. It could be a bug out location someday, who knows? But we want to be able to spend, say, 6 months of the year in the US. And so we want to have somewhere that's our home. So, like a Southern Command, right?
Yeah.
And so we found this land and we bought it and we started just, we walked it a few times and we cut a few trails and I've got incredible help. Carrie Brown come down to do kind of a permaculture walk around it. Brian Alexovich from the Lots Project he lives nearby, so he's been doing a lot of work. He's the one that really cut the original trails. And then we had a
Oh
work
wow.
day with a bunch of delinquents, as I call us, from, we had 18 people, I believe it was. And so it went from, in April when we walked it, we just walked and found trails. And as we walked a little more, we found more. And what we did was we went around and we found this flat section and that flat section because our long term goal is to have some campsites, to have 4 or 5 cabins, including one big cabin site for us. And we're going to, so it's going to be like one main family site and then satellite sites. And these will be things that can be hip camp rentals, or if it ever needed to be like a family compound or something, it would be extra places for family members to stay as well. So we had to build a little bridge over a creek there. So we got that done. We built a composting outhouse. We cleared, I don't know if we got 4 or 5 campsites cleared. We built an 8x8 cabin. What else did we do for an 8x8 cabin? Oh, and just today, one of my neighbors, he rented, this is another thing about renting equipment. He rented a mini excavator and offered everybody on the road half of whatever the going rate was around there for work. So he had a way to pay for it, and he also got work done. He put a culvert and a driveway in, so I don't have to go in 4-wheel drive through a ditch to get into my property anymore. So we now have access there. So it's cool, man. I'm stoked.
Nice.
And as far as plans go, so I'm going to go back down in February, and I'm going to somewhere around there. And the plan is to so it's a little 8x8 cabin, and I'm going to make 3 more all attached. So it's going to like quadruple the size of the cabin. Going to build an outhouse up by the main property, an outdoor shower building, or like a shower stall or whatever, and we'll go from there.
Very cool. So was that raw land when you purchased it? Just totally raw?
Yeah, it was. It had been selective tree harvesting maybe 15 years ago on it, but yeah, it's pretty raw for sure.
Okay. Well, Tim, I don't want to hold you up. You got your daughter in there coming off of volleyball practice. I'm sure she wants to probably get home and do all that. But really appreciate you coming on to talk to me on the podcast tonight. Where can people find you and go support you?
Sure. Yeah, I would. Honestly, the main ways to find me, if you, it's kind of cool, but if you type Toolman Tim into YouTube, you'll find me now. So the other guy that went by Tim the Toolman back in the 90s,
Yeah.
I typically show up before him now in search results. So that's kind of cool.
Nice.
But yeah, I've got a YouTube channel that I put. So every Wednesday there's a tool review. Every second Friday, if you're interested in the Delinquents Gully Chronicles, that's where we've recorded a bunch of the work we've done on the property. That comes out every Friday. And then 3 live streams a week, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Mountain Time now. That also all goes out in the podcast feed. So if you like getting your motivation in your ear holes instead of through your eye holes, add me. It's called Toolman Tim's Workshop Radio in all the podcast places. And yeah, if you type Toolman Tim or Toolman Tim's Workshop into any of the places, you'll find me.
Well, excellent. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, brother. Thanks for having me on. It was a blast.
Awesome.
Yeah,
well, thank you so much, guys. If you like this content, please subscribe to the channel and go share this video around with the folks that you might think get some value out of it. So.